You ever had an OTP that just stuck in your head? This damn scene has been living rent-free in my head since I saw it, and now my brain is filled with Carzel or Astral Hell or Hellsea, whatever the name of this ship is. It's now part of my personal canon. Because when I saw it in my Origin Karlach run, when I saw this scene, it felt like both the opposite and complement of Karlach's arc. Because this is Lae'zel's romance scene, and it is her looking at the sunrise, finding meaning in things that she would have ignored before. On the same sunrise that Karlach could potentially meet her end. And man, did that tickle my brain cells. Look, I tried intellectualizing it, but then my wife told me that ships were about vibes, and so I chewed on the wall a little bit, and then I took a look at the game. I played it to see how much support this ship got, and I was a little surprised. Both of these characters have had their lives affected by a powerful being. At the start, both are on the highway to hell and the stairway to heaven, with both endings resulting in their unfortunate demise. Karlach staying away from Zariel and Avernus, resulting in her infernal engine heart exploding, and Lae'zel flying into Vlaakith's embrace and becoming lich food, which is another bit of contrasting imagery going towards staying away. You see the vision. Look, while being abused by people in power is a common through line in Baldur's Gate 3, from Astarion and Cazador to Mizara abusing Will, who, by the way, deserves a lot better than what he got in and out of the game, I particularly like this ship because of the contrast of imagery and directionality, because of, heaven and hell and everything I've said thus far. I mean, look, even their apparent intended arcs in the game are all about defying that fate and contrasting in a way. Let's start with Lae'zel's path in the game.
Death.
Lae'zel begins the game utterly devoted to Vlaakith, like a wide-eyed idealist, which makes sense because she's the zoomer of the team. The first crack in her beliefs happens at the creche, where she pushes hard for you to obey, which makes sense considering this is literally her god naming her and giving her a direct order, which historically has not been optimal for the listener and is a trend that Baldur's Gate 3 does not buck. Because no matter what you do, Vlaakith orders your execution, which, understandably, scores the first crack in Lae'zel's faith. Eventually, she meets with others of her kind and discovers that Vlaakith's betrayal runs deep. She is momentarily conflicted, but she is quick to make a stand.
Then I have not sinned against Vlaakith. She has sinned against me.
Lae'zel, understandably, does not get to challenge Vlaakith directly in the game, though she does get to hassle her by releasing Orpheus, albeit briefly. Lae'zel has seen the problem and confronts it. This is in stark contrast to our titanic tiefling, Karlach, who on the other hand has been largely ignoring the mounting problem her infernal heart is causing her, choosing ostensibly to ignore it and instead focus on what good she can do in the world, or what fun she can have.
Silver-tongued halfling perched on my lap. I'll have one hand up her skirt. She'll have one down my top.
It is a bit of an issue for her. However, whether she is an Origin character or a party member, after she gets her revenge, the tiefling is forced to face the music.
I'm still dying. I'm dying. I'm going to die.
Notably, her in-game default stance is, I'm a gonna die. And also notably, you always have the option to convince her, or choose to, go to Avernus and live rather than meet her end at the dock. This is an option that is always available regardless of what you do in the game, in contrast to many other characters. Which, as an aside, I feel is a very sensible directorial choice considering her storyline and the finality of the sensitive issues within. That all said, this leaves us pretty free to look beyond the text and headcanon possible reasons she decides, after a full game of ignoring her predicament, to face it head on. I find their character arcs so incredibly compelling and complementary with one another. Both start the game not really knowing that things are going badly for them, but by the end of Act 1, start of Act 2, they know better, but deal with it in opposite ways. To the point where my headcanon is when Karlach is watching and listening to Lae'zel talk about reveling in love and discovering colors, is when the seed of her choice to return to Avernus is planted. And this seed blooms at the end when she's gazing at that same sunrise, her infernal engine ready to burst, and she can make the decision to go to Avernus. Grabs you by the shoulders, shakes you violently in a normal way while drooling and weeping, which is a good time to get into more detail about the endings. This discussion continues with the assumption that Lae'zel defies Vlaakith and that Karlach decides to live. The real branching point is whether or not Lae'zel takes up Orpheus's war and returns to the Astral Sea. And by the way, it is kind of messed up that there is an ending where Karlach convinces Lae'zel to abandon her battle against Vlaakith, causing Orpheus to despair, and then Karlach accepts her own death, leaving Lae'zel on Faerun with no clear purpose. Anyway, the point is Karlach's outcomes are largely the same, but Lae'zel's choice colors Karlach's context. An origin Karlach that has an active romance will get a post-battle discussion with their lover, where the lover understandably begs them to go to Avernus and fight. Ultimately, it is up to the player to decide how it goes. A Lae'zel that stays doesn't have any unique dialogue near as I can figure. However, a Karlach that is alone, or had a Lae'zel that left to fulfill her promise, has to make that choice for herself. It holds a special place in my heart. Karlach has hope now. She's looking for solutions even if they kind of suck. Here, Karlach can be read as inspired by Lae'zel. Instead of being convinced by her lover, Karlach instead thinks of how she's changed, how she's stronger, and how she can do good in Avernus. In either event, this leads to the post-game party.
That's my strapping girl.
A Lae'zel that stays in Faerun tints Karlach's choice to live as one that wants to leave the cycle. The Githyanki chooses not to pursue duty, instead choosing her love, fighting beside Karlach in Avernus. Karlach is only in Avernus to live, to repair or remove her infernal engine. I read it as them leaving the cycles in situations that hurt and threaten them, with Lae'zel's process being mostly complete, with the occasional assassination attempts from Vlaakith, and Karlach's almost at its fruition, as she likely won't stay in Avernus after repairing her heart. A Lae'zel that left to wage war for Githyanki freedom gives a different tone to Karlach's presence in Avernus. Because of that one line,
Maybe I could do some good.
my read on this is different. They both become people doing good where they can. Karlach, until her engine is modified or removed, can only do good down in the hellish Avernus. Lae'zel, taking up Orpheus's charge, goes to the Astral Sea above where her good can affect her entire people and can prevent the tragedy that almost happened to her from happening to others. In this situation, I like to think that they see each other every now and then. And eventually, when they've done all they feel they could, they finally rest in each other's arms. Frothing at the mouth, being completely normal. One last thing, I did not know where to squeeze this in, but Karlach is huge in touch and physicality, right? And Lae'zel feeds that so hard. Her romance scene, Lae'zel's romance scene, is a beatdown. And there's that awkward date with Karlach. For Lae'zel, that's not an awkward date, it's just a date, because I don't think she's ever been on one. To her, it's novel. Look, I don't know, this all speaks to me in a way that makes me sound like I'm trying to gargle. It's like their bad endings both lead to their deaths because they couldn't overcome the damage done to them, while their living endings aren't conclusive but are at least a continuation of who they could become. They don't just win and everything is done and solved, they have a big fight ahead of them and they're still fighting. Look, it's this constant contrast from heaven, hell at the start and the beginning and the sunrise and the sunset to the loss of Lae'zel's story and Karlach regaining hers that makes this ship stick in my head. And I hope it's stuck in your head too. Who's your OTP? Thanks for watching. Thanks for making it this far. I am Patinator. I'll see you later.